speaking with me, Tarun Nangia. The Supreme Court of India and a bench which was headed by Chief Justice of India, Justice N.V. Ramana, and also comprising of Justices Justice A.S. Bopanna and Justice Hema Kohli, came down heavily on the ONGC, the public sector undertaking, for denying to pay fees to arbitrators as had been agreed or directed by the court. I'll take you back to share something with you that the Supreme Court, in an arbitration involving Schlumberger Asia Services and ONGC, had said that Justice Dharmadhikari and then Justice Jai Narayan Patel. Now, who are these two people? Justice Jai Narayan Patel was the former Chief Justice of the Calcutta High Court. And there was Justice Dharmadhikari, which is Justice S.C. Dharmadhikari. Now, these two people, the Supreme Court appointed as arbitrators and said they will fix their own fees, which jointly both parties, which is ONGC and Schlumberger Asia Services, will pay. What happened is ONGC denied to pay the fees to the arbitrators as decided. The Supreme Court came down heavily on them and saying that it is contempt of court. Also, it is insulting judges. As it is, India, which aims to be one of the world's top arbitration destinations, doesn't have a good name because we don't pay enough to our arbitrators. We don't pay them by what global standards are. So we pay them less. When that happens, how do we even aim to become the world's leading arbitration hub? We will explore all these issues, but let me open this discussion today. I will request my panelists today. I have Shashank Garg. He's a well-known arbitrator as well as an advocate practicing at the Delhi High Court and the Supreme Court. I have with me senior advocate Sanjeev Sen, another well-known arbitrator, also practiced at the Supreme Court of India, also appears at the Delhi High Court, joining me. I'll request Shashank to lay the ground and explain the whole issue first before we go into this discussion. Shashank, can you lay the ground for the audience?
Thank you, Tarun. I think you've already given the background to the rebuke that ONGC got from the Supreme Court. But we have to see the larger issue. What is the issue and why did the Supreme Court came heavily on one of the PSUs in this matter? See, this is an ongoing issue with many PSUs who in their contract prescribes a fee schedule which is not in consonance with either the Arbitration Conciliation Act or the market standards. So when this contract is agreed upon between the parties, they may just say that as Annexure A, Annexure B is the fee schedule. If there is an arbitration that will happen, then it would be governed by our rates of the fee. Now, when the dispute arises and arbitrators are appointed, they then try and convince, or I could, if for want of a better word, force that appointed tribunal to comply with the agreed upon fee schedule in the contract. Now, arbitrators did not agree upon that fee schedule. Neither any of the parties, to be honest, other than the PSU itself, would really know what that fee schedule is. So very often we have seen in very big arbitrations of NHI, also ONGC and other PSUs who have been doing this practice, it's very difficult to get good quality arbitrators to agree upon. Some of them have agreed upon just because courts have nominated in Section 11. So out of respect for court, some arbitrators have continued in the past. But it is becoming increasingly difficult for arbitrators to do these very complex arbitrations for marginal fee in comparison to what they would otherwise be charging in a proper commercial dispute. So, and with the amendments coming in and the timelines becoming very, very stringent, the arbitrators also now have very tight timelines. They have very limited time at hand to finish with an arbitration. So if they're choosing to do one of these matters where the fee is maybe 20% or even sometimes lesser than what they would otherwise be entitled to, it just doesn't, go very well with the arbitration community. So in this background, I think Supreme Court's rebuke came in very timely because very similar disputes are pending across the country with many PSUs, many arbitrators suffering at the hand of such PSUs. So I hope that there will be some sort of an improvement immediately because the Supreme Court has come to the aid of the arbitrators in this case.
Interesting. Supreme Court has taken the bull by the horns. They have been very vocal on this. I'll go to senior advocate Sanjeev Sen. Could you decode why did the Supreme Court have to take this tough stand on this issue? because they say they'll issue contempt notice in this matter. Say almost went to the extent of saying that judges have been insulted by the ONGC. If I may recall, they also said that engage in frivolous litigations where a lot of money is spent, and here the due is not given to the arbitrators of what they should ideally be given.
You see, Tarun, unless this is an extremely important aspect, as you and Shashank have already, told the audience, for India to succeed in arbitrations, become a global hub in arbitrations, this is a very, very crucial and practical aspects which has to be settled. There are two aspects in this whole discussion that we are doing. One is the immediate aspect as to exorbitant fees versus reasonable fees, etc. What is reasonable? What is exorbitant? Supreme Court's comments, etc. And the second aspect is whatever is already laid down in the Arbitration Act. There is quite a lack of clarity in the implementation of it. I'll just explain to you how. See, first, to give you a background, as you all know, you see, as per the 246th Law Commission report, this whole Law Commission report was based upon a few judgments. Now, the Law Commission says that the arbitrators often charge exorbitant fees, and therefore there is need to regulate the fees of the arbitrators. Justice has to be made accessible to all litigants. It should not be just, accessible to rich litigants. So that was the intent of the Law Commission, which was actually embodied in this amendment of the Arbitration Act. And the fourth schedule is a direct result of that Law Commission report, by which the arbitrators' fees was circumscribed to a certain extent, to a certain level. Now, the first aspect of the matter is whether that the fees that have been fixed are reasonable, whether they are practical or not. Now, as Shashank says, I mean, he does a lot of very big arbitrations, I know. You see, a similar arbitration, if you were doing in Paris or London or Singapore, the fees would be far, far higher. So therefore, naturally, the tendency of top counsels and arbitrators would naturally be to move to such destinations which are more lucrative. So we cannot really ignore that aspect, that practical aspect of market forces. But at the same time, the legislative intent of the fourth schedule, obviously, is to make a cap, to mark a cap on the arbitrator's fees. And that is exactly what the Supreme Court and the Delhi High Court and various high courts have repeatedly emphasized. And that was a result of various instances of total arbitrary fees charging by various arbitrators who abused their position. And in fact, in one of the judgments, it was clearly stated that they abused their positions and took the parties by surprise. The parties were in a disadvantageous position because they were fearing that if they raised the issue of fees, then the arbitrators would turn against them. They would be prejudiced. And therefore, they could not raise their voice. Now that was one view of the Supreme Court. Now the other view is that what was expressed the other day by the Honorable Chief Justice was a diametrically opposite view. Now what is reasonable, what is not reasonable, is a very, very difficult line to tread. But all I can say is that it is time that India lays down these very crucial aspect of its fees, fixation of fees of arbitrator in a very, very clear and transparent manner. Here, I'll just briefly touch upon the second aspect. What is the second aspect? The fees have been fixed by the fourth schedule. Now, ad hoc arbitrations which are going on all over India, they don't follow the fourth schedule. Now, the high courts, when they appoint, I mean, some interpretations are because rules have not been fixed. Therefore, the arbitrators are not bound by the fourth schedule. I mean, if that is so, then why enact this fourth schedule? I mean, this is creating all kinds of confusion today. There is one interpretation of one high court, another interpretation of another high court, and I think there is quite a lot of chaos in this aspect. And unless and until this aspect is clarified, cleared, I don't think India can aspire to, to take the place of, say, Dubai or Singapore or London in terms of international commercial arbitration.
You made a very good point. And take this forward with Shashank. Shashank, you see what happened recently. Senior advocate Harish Salve was arguing this matter before the Chief Justice of India, Justice Ramanna. Matter involving Lalit Modi and Beena Modi. And Harish Salve had, in a sense, discussed that this can be arbitrated in Singapore. And our Chief Justice suggested, why not Hyderabad? Now, Hyderabad has a fantastic new arbitration center which has come up. But if we don't pay with global standards, there will always be an incentive for everybody to go to Singapore or other locations like London. And Indian arbitration centers would not be growing, I mean, in the way they are supposed to. Do you think this discrepancy needs to be highlighted?
Tarun, very important point you have highlighted. And in fact, this is what I wanted to say, that the answer to all this menace is institutional arbitration. As soon as you move towards institutional arbitration, and whether you choose an international institution, ICC, SIAC, or any other renowned international institution, you know the fee schedule beforehand. All these websites of these institutions have a fee calculator. You put in the quantum that is involved, number of arbitrators and the clause, and it will give you a rough estimate of the fee that is payable. So a party can immediately know what is the likelihood of what the kind of budgeting it needs to do. And I have never heard, there might be some exceptions, anybody raising any issue or having any difficulty paying these fees of any institution when it comes to foreign institutions. Now, to replicate that in India, we also have some world-class institutions that have come up. MCI has been there. Now Hyderabad Institute has come up. Delhi International Arbitration Center has also been there. And from what I have learned, HKIC, not HKIC, I don't know what is the abbreviation that is being used for the Hyderabad International Arbitration Center. But the kind of fee schedule that they possibly are likely to come out with should be able to match some of the international institutions. Keeping in mind what the Indian society needs, I think they should be able to have two fee schedules, one for some threshold, and beyond that threshold, a much higher fee schedule. So as far as institutional arbitration is concerned, if the parties opt for that, this entire issue of overcharging or confusion with respect to the arbitrator's fee will be done away with. But we also have to address the issue of this overcharging and undercharging of the arbitrator's fee, because we must address the issue of ad hoc arbitration, which still remains the majority of how the arbitrations are being done in India. So what Sanjeev was in fact pointing out towards the later part of the last decade, we saw there were many complaints with respect to arbitrators charging fee which was exorbitant, and mostly PSUs were getting affected by it. But that issue largely got addressed, in my opinion, when the amendments were brought in. How? Because the timelines were prescribed. Now that liberty that the arbitrators had when they could have dragged the arbitration for 5 years and charge per sitting, all of that was taken care by these timelines coming in. Then what we saw recently, what the Supreme Court did recently, is an example of a different kind of exploitation that is happening of the arbitrators. So I'm not saying that it has not happened where arbitrators have been very, very arbitrary and unreasonable. Those instances have also been there in the past. But after these timelines have come in, that menace has been taken care of to a very, very large extent. The other answer, of course, is as soon as you switch to institutional arbitration, you should be all right. But the fact remains that these institutions will have to time and again check what they are providing to the end user, what they are providing to the arbitrators. Are they in sync with what the international practices are, if at all they want to really work as an international arbitration institution where foreign parties are equally interested and so are the foreign arbitrators. So we will see, time will tell.
Yeah, I would just like to, add one thing, Tarun, is that I am all for institutional arbitration. And that is how, Singapore works. That is how Paris works. That is how London works. But the crucial issue, as you have flagged in our discussion today, is fixation of fees. Now, I'll give you one example. I am a member of the Indian Council of Arbitrations and part of the panel of the arbitrators in the which is under the functions under the aegis of the FICCI. Now, the arbitral fees fixed there are so low that a busy senior advocate or a busy honorable judge who's retired would never agree to such a fee, because he knows that these ad hoc arbitrations which are prevalent in India, which do not follow the fourth schedule, you can charge anything and everything. So there has to be some kind of a system which is uniform in the entire country. But today, unfortunately, there is complete chaos. On one hand, there are ridiculously low fees in the ICA, for example. And in ad hoc arbitration, somebody may be exploiting the system and charging totally unreasonable fees. So, as Shashank says, if we are to match Paris, if you are to match Singapore, there has to be more clarity. There has to be more clear thinking as to how arbitral fees are to be fixed, which is your moot point in this program. Otherwise, practically, institutional arbitration cannot succeed. Institutional arbitrations, as you've seen, as per Section 11, the parties can agree to a schedule which is not in consonance with fourth schedule. So institutional arbitrations, various institutions can fix whatever fees they want. But the crucial aspect is fixing of the fees by these institutions. It has to be practical. It can be of various categories. But how they are going to fix the fees? Today, according to me, a majority of the institutions which are functioning in India, though they are very good, they have good infrastructure, but in this crucial aspect of fixation of fees, it is not realistic. It does not match up to the aspirations of corporate India, so as to speak, and therefore that has to be given a rethink and a relook if we are to succeed. That is one. Secondly, institution versus ad hoc. The legislative intention is made clear by the fourth schedule, but a retired judge, I know retired judges who are charging 10 lakhs, 20 lakhs per sitting. 15 lakhs per sitting. On one hand, and here your maximum as per the fourth schedule is 19,87,000 plus 30 lakhs on the excess amount. There has to be the legislature also has to get down and give some clarity to and some kind of indicator. But as I said, institutional arbitration is completely separate. They go by their own rules, but they themselves must think that what is a practical solution, how to fix the fees, whether in separate categories of disputes you fix separate categories of fees or not, etc., etc. So therefore, this thinking has not come as of now, and to succeed, India has to rethink its fixation of arbitral fees by these institutions.
We have to rethink this fee structure if we want to emerge as the world's leading arbitral destination, which indeed is our aim. We all know how much of heart and soul Justice Ramanna has put into the Hyderabad arbitration center which has come up. The only thing that limits us is the fees, because we are aiming not only for local arbitrations, we are saying that we should be an arbitral destination, which means we are expecting people from all over the world to come and arbitrate in India, which means that they will look forward to what fees they are earning. Otherwise, what will be the incentive to push arbitration in this country? Why will people stop going to Singapore or prefer India also as an alternative to Singapore? Shashank, what's your view on that?
You see, Tarun, fee, in fact, has always been one of the issues, but it was never highlighted.
Yes.
The focus has always been on how the enforcement of an award will take place in India, how interventionist our courts are, etc., etc. And all of that after 2015 amendments and post-Balco judgments have taken care of. But with the recent episode in Supreme Court, this issue of fee also came to light. It became a talking point. And as Sanjeev has already pointed out, that we are concerned with this issue because majority of arbitration in the country are still ad hoc arbitrations, and there the fixation of fee, unless followed by the arbitrator, if the arbitrator is not following Schedule 4, will be completely at his discretion. Now, that discretion cannot be arbitrary is what I think he was also trying to say. And I think we all agree as far as that is concerned. So we are looking at two complete extreme positions. One, the arbitrator must not exploit the system and overcharge. But on the same hand, if a PSU or any entity for that matter insists on a certain class quality arbitrator, which is, let's say, a very, very renowned arbitrator in the country, a former judge of Supreme Court or, of High Court, who does commercial work primarily, and they want that quality of arbitrator, but the fee that they want to pay is not in consonance with what otherwise should be paid to them and is just as per their own unilateral schedule of fee. That I think is completely unjustified. That's only the first aspect of it. But the second aspect is what we discussed earlier, that what is happening, it's not just that they make a request before the arbitrator to follow the unilateral fee schedule that they have. They've been asking for recusal of arbitrators. They're forcing arbitrators to recuse. They've been going to courts seeking fresh appointments. And again, when they go for a fresh appointment, they seek a former judge of Supreme Court and a former judge of High Court. So somewhere they will have to elect. What is the quality of arbitration and arbitrator they want, and what is the adequate compensation for that? Because please understand, this is commercial arbitration. This is not charity. Who is an arbitrator? Arbitrator is a private judge who's being paid by the parties.
Yes.
We have mediation. We have other mechanisms of dispute resolution. NALSA has been doing great work. Lok Adalats are being organized across the country. I can understand, but that's a very different ballgame. But when we come to commercial arbitration, the word commercial is attached, and we cannot ignore the fact that it will come at a cost.
That you put it very rightly, Mr. Sen. Taking forward from what Shashank said, commerce is at the heart of arbitration. Because there is commerce, everything exists. And because there is commerce, it is played at the world level. ONGC in this case is not some local company operating in 2-3 districts of India. It's a company which is a global company. It has got exploration works, I think, everywhere around the world. It is one of the world's biggest companies. So why should it pay less to Indian arbitrators? If it goes to Singapore, it will pay that price. Why are we ourselves shortchanging our own people when it will affect the arbitral ecosystem in this country? The court has taken a stand. Do you think it will be followed up? Or do you think in other cases, these kind of discrepancies will remain? Whatever the court said may be an aberration. Or will you think after what Justice Ramanna said, there will be rethink on how arbitrators are paid fees by public sector undertakings?
I think, as I indicated right in the beginning, this is a total gray area, the arbitral fees. As Shashank correctly said, the emphasis was on other aspects of non-functioning or misfunctioning of the Arbitration Act of 1940, which were plugged in. But this aspect has now come in, and people normally are shy of talking about fees. But today, fees, I mean, this is a very practical aspect for the Arbitration Act to work properly, function properly. I mean, the subject that you've brought about today is a very, very important practical aspect for the Act to function properly. Now, unless there is some kind of thinking which the legislature, the arbitrator, the courts must think in sync, there must be some kind of uniformity in fixation of fees. I mean, there can't be complete divergence of views and anybody doing anything at their beating the system by not following the act. The act also should not be so ridiculous, so to fix absolutely ridiculously low fees. And as Shashank says, in case of some PSUs, they actually fix fees which are absolutely unrealistic. But at the same time, if one was to take up the brief for the PSUs, one could also argue that that arbitration is a private dispute resolution forum. So if it is a private dispute resolution forum, then the parties must have some kind of a right or some kind of a say in the fixation of fees. There, I mean, if one were to think from the ONGC's point of view, if the arbitrators fix absolutely exorbitant and unreasonable fees, it is definitely entitled to raise an objection. But where do we draw the line? From one hand, the arbitrators exploiting the system, or to the other hand, the PSUs and other companies which are insisting on an absolutely ridiculously low level of schedule of skis. So therefore, this entire aspect of fee fixation, I think, needs a complete relook. And the legislature, the judiciary, the commercial world, the institutions must put their minds together and think alike. I mean, as I said, the schedule of Indian Council of Arbitration is even lesser than the fourth schedule. I mean, as it is, the ad hoc, if you compare the ad hoc arbitration fees with the fourth schedule does not compare at all. Now, where you have to kind of merge, and the thinking has to be composite thinking. There has to be, of course, there can be an arbitration of 10,000 crores. There can be an arbitration of 2 crores. The fees cannot be similar. But some kind of mechanism, some kind of thinking has to be brought about where the parties are comfortable and the arbitrators are comfortable, the commercial world is comfortable, and we can have a congenial atmosphere to have these arbitrations going. But without uniformity and with this kind of chaos which exists today in the system, with ad hoc arbitrations going one way, institutions going one way, the fourth schedule going the third way, I mean, unless and until this chaos is sorted out, I don't see, too much progress in the matter.
Point well taken. We are almost out of time. One last comment from Shashank. The Chief Justice of India, Justice Ramana, took this up. It's been now highlighted on this show. Do you think either A, the fourth schedule will be amended, or the institutions will again amend their fee structure after this? Maybe the Hyderabad Arbitration Center will further amend the fees that it is allowing arbitrators to charge or what they are to be payable. Do you think some kind of watershed movement has happened because what the Chief Justice said?
Arun, I think I will conclude with a slightly controversial statement, which possibly can be taken up in the next round of discussion when you do. When there is no cap for the council's fee who are arguing these matters, why should there be a cap on the arbitrator's fee who's doing exactly the same function, not of a council, but as a part of an arbitration ecosystem, which is not public service? This is part of as I pointed out earlier, it is part of a commercial arbitration ecosystem. And everybody has a role. When we bring in experts, top 4 chartered accountant firms and even other very renowned firms have quantum delay experts. Their fee is sometimes even higher than many of the senior counsels that are being engaged in these matters. Nobody talks about any cap for any of the fee that is being paid to the counsels or any third-party experts being brought in. So should there really be a cap for the arbitrator's fee in an ad hoc mechanism? That is, I think, a question that we will have to ponder upon and answer. And as far as Schedule 4 is concerned, I think the debate has already started. Schedule 4 already feels obsolete in terms of the disparity it has with international institutions. And as Sanjeev was saying, if it is 1,000 crore rupee arbitration, ICC, SIAC, ideally the fee of an individual arbitrator would be roughly 2 to 2.5 crores. And as per Schedule 4, for the same dispute, there would be a ceiling and he would get 1/4 of it. So why to have disparity for same sort of work that he's going to do just because the institution chosen is a foreign institution, which is practical? So these questions have to be answered and in a practical and realistic manner.
Point well taken. This gives us enough food for thought to think for the next episode. But indeed, it was a pleasure discussing this issue with you, Shashank, and senior advocate Sanjeev Sen. Thank you for making time and joining us. I think this will, in a sense, trigger a discussion in the industry, discussion in the court system also. We have so many eminent retired judges who function as arbitrators. I think they will also contribute to this discussion in the coming days. Thank you so much, viewers. Thank you so much, my panelists, for joining me today. Thank you so much.
For more such videos, subscribe to the NewsX YouTube channel, hit the bell icon.